This episode contains material that may be triggering to some individuals. Please check the show notes for more information and be mindful of your own mental health and comfort levels. Hey podcasters, are you tired of endlessly searching for the perfect guest for your show? Well, look no further. Podmatch is the ultimate platform for connecting podcast hosts with guests. Whether you're a seasoned podcaster looking for fresh voices or an expert wanting to share your knowledge, Podmatch has got you covered. It's kind of like a dating site for podcasts. With Podmatch's advanced algorithm, finding your perfect match is just a few clicks away. Simply create your profile, specify your interests, and let Podmatch do the rest. You'll be matched with guests or hosts who align with your interests in no time. To get started today, visit www.joinpodmatch.com/Quiet Connection Podcast and start making meaningful connections that will take your podcast to the next level. Welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma surrounding perinatal mental health. I'm Chelsea. Today's guest is Sarah, a nurse practitioner, entrepreneur, and heart mom who's walked through fear, uncertainty, and resilience after her daughter, Meadow, was born with multiple congenital heart defects. We're talking about OCD, advocacy, and learning to live in the in-between. Here's Sarah. Hello. Today I'm here with Sarah. Sarah, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good. It's a Friday morning as we're recording this. We're crossing our fingers for a smooth transition into the weekend.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, Sarah, I'm excited to chat with you. I would super appreciate it if you could introduce yourself to my listeners and also let us know who you were before you became a mom.
Whew. I feel like I've lived several different lives in the last couple of years, so I'll try to keep this short. But I think maybe my 3 core identities and kind of like labels that I lean into is I am an entrepreneur. I'm also a nurse practitioner. And more important than both of those, I'm a heart mom. And so during 2020, I had this incredible luck, fortune, whatever you wanna call it, lightning in a bottle moment to start a business doing the thing that at that point I loved the most, which was teaching. And so I just graduated nurse practitioner school. It was crazy times during COVID, and there was all this uncertainty about, like, would we even be able to take our licensing exams? And if so, what does that process look like when we're literally in the middle of a global pandemic? And so
Yeah.
there's just so much anxiety and so much uncertainty and so many things going on. I think in total, I had my exam scheduled 5 times, and I didn't get even an opportunity to start the exam until the 5th time. Like, I would show
My
up to a testing
gosh.
center, it would just be closed. I'd be like, "Okay." They tried to do the online thing, and nothing worked. Like, it was pandemonium, but
Yeah.
all of that
2020 in a
being
nutshell.
yes, just pandemonium with a pandemic, absolutely. But ultimately, what happened was I had all this anxiety about taking this exam. And when I finally got to take the thing, I was like, oh, that really wasn't that bad. I would love to help my classmates figure out how to better pass this thing and feel less anxious about it because everybody is just on next level anxiety. And what I didn't realize was a lot of people feel really anxious about taking that exam. And so I gave it to the first 100 people in my Facebook group for free if they would just invite somebody in and give me some feedback and let me know. And the first day that I went to sell that course, I sold it for $15 for lifetime access for this 3-hour course, but I made $1,000 in a day, and that, like, broke my brain. Like,
Yeah.
I made 40 grand as a nurse. Like, I had never had an experience of, like, "Oh my god, just, like, $1,000 in my bank account today? Like, what?" And so that was really kind of my first leap into entrepreneurship. I had tutored during college. I knew already that I liked to teach. I mean, I have a master's in nursing education and a nurse practitioner degree. So, like, I knew teaching was going to be my path. I just didn't imagine that I was going to carve out this new path for myself. And so I give you all this backstory because being an entrepreneur and being a nurse practitioner are like big core pieces of my identity and who I am. But I really think becoming a mom really shifted a lot of that. And for me, I thought that I was gonna have this normal, healthy, beautiful I mean, she's beautiful, but normal, healthy baby. And I found out at the very end of my pregnancy, just weeks before giving birth, that I did not have a normal or healthy baby at all. I had a baby that had 4 heart defects. And so it was really this whirlwind moment for me because I had this really incredible business. I actually sold it to a bigger test prep company a couple weeks before she was born, before we ever knew she was sick. And so in my head, I'm thinking, you know, I'm going to be on the executive team. I'm going to have this C-suite role. Like, I need to integrate my employees. Like, there's all these logistical pieces of how you bring one company into another and do that well. But all of that really had to shut off to be like, oh no, I'm now about to have a daughter who's going to have heart surgery in her first week of life. And now she's going to have heart surgery again by the time she's a year old. And she's going to have 5 to 6 more throughout her life. So everything just had to immediately pivot. And I think because of my experience as an entrepreneur, where I really spoke a lot and advocated a lot for mental health in the test prep space, it was this really natural evolution to now do what I do today, which is I do a ton, I do a ton of advocacy work for congenital heart disease.
Yeah. And that's kind of how we connected because it's all interwoven, right? Like your motherhood journey has shifted what you do, but also hasn't.
Yeah.
You're still an advocate, just in a very different way.
Yeah, it's the core centerpiece, like the invisible string.
Yeah, that's been coming up a lot lately. That analogy, the invisible string. I don't know.
Lots of
That's
Taylor Swift fans then.
well, I mean, I am a T Swift fan. I'm like,
Same. Prime
yeah.
time for that right now.
Oh my gosh, yes. As of recording this, it's Taylor Swift week.
Uh-huh.
Life of a Showgirl is
Loud and
all
proud.
over. Whoo, yeah, we can't say you know what? I will say this, um, at least it's given us a break from K-pop Demon Hunters in my house. So, now instead of getting in the car and saying, "Can we listen to Golden?" It's, "Can we listen to, Fate of Ophelia?" And I'm like, "Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Yes, we can."
Me and my 3-year-old, we have the dance down already.
You d Oh my god, I love it. I love it, I love it. Okay, we could talk about Taylor Swift forever, but so let's focus it back sort of, let's bring it back a little bit. You said you didn't find out until kind of right before she was born. Talk to me about that shift, like, and you said you were just going through selling your company, so you've got big things going on in your life, and the doctor, I'm assuming it was your doctor at the time, was like, "Hey, we gotta talk."
Yeah, I kind of had a bizarre pregnancy in the sense that from the pretty much the moment I got pregnant, a few weeks in, I was like, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong.
Wow.
And I just had this like impending sense of doom all the time. And what I didn't know then that I know about myself today is I actually have obsessive compulsive disorder. So that
Hey,
impending sense of
samesies.
doom, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the things that I did during pregnancy make a lot more sense now. But I will say that did I have OCD? Yes. But I also had a chaotic pregnancy in the sense that I had bleeding on and off until I was 28 weeks pregnant. And so I would just like, go to the bathroom, there'd be bright red blood. Every time there's bright red blood, of course, you have to go to the OB. And so my anxiety was already up. And really, I think it was right past the anatomy scan. My daughter had been a little bit small in the anatomy scan, but not anything crazy. And so they were like, just in case, we're going to do a few more ultrasounds. We're going to do some growth ultrasounds and just make sure she's continuing to grow. Like, that's the goal here. And in the process of one of those growth ultrasounds, I was asking my OB, I come in for my appointment, I had the ultrasound. She was telling me all the typical stuff for that appointment because, like when you're 28 weeks, they tell you X, Y, and Z. And I was like, okay, I love all this information. That's great. But what about the growth ultrasound? Like, what are the results? And she like looked at me really strange and she's like, why would you have a growth ultrasound? And I was like, what do you what do you mean right now? Like,
What?
I've been in here for growth ultrasounds every 2 weeks for, like, the last 2 months. How do you I know they see so many patients, and I know there's so much going on, but, like, how do you not even just, like, look at the chart and know what
Right?
I'm here for? I told my husband, I was like, "I'm gonna sound like a crazy person, and I just need you to do this with me, but, like, I have to find another OB." Because I feel like if anything goes wrong in the delivery room, that is not the human that I want with me and navigating that with me. I was like, I think I'll just dissolve.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a new OB when I was 30 weeks pregnant. And the deal with getting the new OB was he said, I want to do another anatomy scan as a liability check for us in our office. So I met him for the first time at 30 weeks. I had that anatomy scan, which I had already had 2 anatomy scans that were normal, by the way. So I had this 3rd anatomy scan, I think it's gonna be totally fine, at right around 33 weeks, and that's when the ultrasound tech was like, "Hey, something looks a little weird," and what they called it was a possible dilated aorta, and I'm a nurse practitioner, and I had no idea what that meant. I'm like, "What do you mean, possibly dilated? And if it is possibly dilated, like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't understand." And it took me a few weeks after that to get into maternal fetal medicine, which was its own shamble because I think something could be wrong with my daughter's heart, and I don't know for sure. And I have OCD, even though I don't know it yet. So I want the absolute certainty to know that, like, she's going to be okay and I'm going to be okay. And so it wasn't until 36 weeks that we finally got her diagnosis of tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia, which is one of the most severe types of tetralogy of Fallot.
My goodness.
Yes,
Yeah.
chaos.
It is chaos, and I'm curious too, like, is that something if you had seen a different OB, is that something that they would have noticed sooner? Or is it something that you can't really tell until later?
They should have been able to see it in either of the NAMI scans that I had previously.
Mhm.
But what I know now that I didn't know then is if you have the 4 basic chambers of the heart, so the 4 main components, then it's a 50-50 shot whether you get that prenatal diagnosis. And so Meadow, even though she had reroutings and things that were missing and holes and, like, all this extra stuff, she had the 4 chambers of the heart. And so we just fell into that really gnarly statistic.
Okay. Yeah, because that is and I've met with a lot of parents and a lot of families at this point, like and that is a diagnosis that I had never heard of before. So, again, like, I'm learning about this, and it is so interesting to me, especially that you come from a medical background, and even you yourself were like, "Can you could you please just tell me what this means? Like,
Yeah,
can
yeah.
someone please explain this to me?" Um, and I'm curious too, like, so now you can look back and know that you had and have OCD. Again, a lot of women aren't diagnosed until they have kids because it doesn't present itself or it does and it's just like, "Oh, you have generalized anxiety disorder."
Oh, yes. It's been the diagnosis of my life.
That was the same that was my diagnosis from age 12 until
Same,
my
same.
Yep.
Literally age 12, and then finally at 28, I'm like, "This is not it." I was like, "I
No.
don't know what this is, but this is not it."
No, it took me having my 2nd baby for them to be like, "Oh, by the way, it's OCD."
You're like, "Thank you. Now I can finally
Cool,
get
cool,
the
cool.
treatment that I need."
We're still working on that. But all of that to say, like, so you're already hypervigilant, you're already anxious. What did that sort of do to your vision of the remainder of your pregnancy? Like, you've got your anxiety compounded by your medical knowledge. How were those last few weeks?
I really I cannot even tell you much about what happened in that time. It is like what I actually remember the most is here's the thing about being a family nurse practitioner. In a lot of ways, you're a generalist. So, your goal is to be able to identify something that's not normal and get it to the human that it belongs to. So, I would be like,
Mm,
okay, like you've had a weird EKG. Maybe you have this heart rhythm going on. Now, I'm going to send you to cardiology. I am not, like, I have not been trained to read ultrasounds. But
mhm.
me and my medical brain in my cluster at the end of my pregnancy was like, I'm just going to read through the whole ultrasound report and I'm going to try to make sense of everything going on because The other added layer that was so painful for me was had it just been tetralogy of Fallot, I mean, that would have been bad enough.
Yeah.
Um, but it's much less likely that she would also have a genetic condition on top of it. But because it was tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia, and it was this more severe type of it, there was like an 80% chance that she was gonna have a genetic condition. And so I'm reading through the ultrasound reports, trying to figure out, does she also have some sort of genetic condition on top of it, as if I could even figure that out for myself. And I ended up getting in this loop where it looked like something in her brain could also be off. And so
Mm.
I just spent a lot of those last few weeks trying to read, learn, prepare, and honestly, I was obsessing and compulsing like crazy on Google trying to figure this out, even though there's no way to figure it out until she was just literally born and here, and then we could kind of assess what we're doing here.
Yeah. And I laugh, like, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, if you haven't lived it, like, I feel like when you say, like, "I was obsessing and compulsing," the laugh is like, "Oh, I know how that
Oh,
goes,"
yes, I
right?
feel it in
Like,
my bones.
yes, and if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry because
Yes.
it's all-consuming. I'm curious, like, what was your support like in that time? Like, did you have family and friends who were kind of trying to ground you a little bit, or, like, what did that look like for you?
I think me and my husband really grounded down in those last few weeks, and especially too when she was born, of just like, we are a team.
Mhm.
And like my husband, he worked with me in my business, but previous to that, like he was an over the road truck driver. And so that is a very different experience than being a nurse practitioner. And so there were things that he needed to lean on me for to be able to better understand and better educate himself about what our daughter was about to go through and what we were about to go through. But I also needed to be able to lean on him because here I am at the end of my pregnancy, and this is not how I envisioned or hoped that this was going to go. I'm kind of, I'm, meltdown would be the only word I could think to describe it. But unfortunately for me, and unfortunately for my undiagnosed OCD at the time, I had gotten it in my head during my pregnancy. If I announce I'm pregnant, if I have a baby shower, if I do X, Y, or Z, then she's not going to make it.
Mhm.
And so, literally, the week before we had this third anatomy scan, one of my coworkers very sweetly and very kindly threw me a surprise baby shower. And so, in my head, I'm like, I caused this. This is my fault. And so, I really need to be able to lean on him for that. Obviously, there was a lot of reassurance seeking going on,
Yes.
but I also think there's a normal level of reassurance that just lives in a relationship, OCD or no OCD as well.
Yeah. It's to hear you talk about it is it's resonating with me very deeply, and my child did not have a congenital heart defect or disorder or anything like that, but OCD is OCD, and you're
Yes.
gonna pick up on every little thing, and you're gonna obsess, and it's gonna be your fault. It's almost like superstition on steroids.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Uh,
you're like, "Okay, I cannot do this because that means that this bad thing is gonna happen, or this bad
yeah.
thing happened because I was happy today," or something like that, right?
Magical thinking eats me alive.
My gosh, yes. We love DBT over here, and yeah, magical thinking and catastrophizing, fun times. So I am glad to hear though that you did have like, you and your partner really did kind of, like, hunker down and team
We were
up
a
and be
unit.
like, yeah, that's it's so important. It's so important, and also, you kinda didn't have a choice at that point.
No, and you gotta think too, this is 2022, and so, like, we were out of COVID, but we weren't really out of COVID yet
Yeah.
in the hospital setting. So, the way that the visitor policy was set up was you could have 3 visitors, but once that person was a visitor, they were a permanent visitor, like, they
Yep.
marked a spot off the list. And so we're like, how do this is the first grandchild on both sides. How in the world do we pick who gets to see her and who doesn't and just all of this? And so like we decided together, like, we're not gonna let anybody into the hospital setting because number one, we don't want to pick and choose between people because that doesn't feel good to us. But number two, like we know this is about to be this really like scary, harrowing experience. And in the nicest way possible, we don't want to have to account for your reactions, your emotions, seeing her like this because most people never see anyone in their lifetime look like she looked before and after her surgeries.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So, what was your birth experience like? Did you have like a planned C-section? Like what because of her heart defect, I'm assuming it had to sort of be intentional.
It was intentional, but it was intentional in the fact that it was scheduled around the heart surgeon's schedule and when worked
Okay.
best for him to make sure he was in the country because we have this fabulous heart surgeon here. He's incredible. And I believe it's a week or a week and a half every year he goes out of the country and he goes back to his home country, which I love for him.
Yeah.
And it meant that when he came back from Meadow surgery, he looked so refreshed, like he was ready. But it also meant like we really wanted Meadow to come at the right time if we could arrange that. And so I ended up being induced at 39 weeks. If she hadn't been sick and nothing else had went on, I was planning on a water birth at what are the facilities where it's like home birth-esque, but you still have
Like a
like
birthing center.
a birthing center,
Right?
yes, that is the word. I
Yeah.
was planning on a birthing center, I was gonna have a water birth, I was not gonna be induced, I was gonna do as minimal interventions as possible, etcetera. Instead, I was induced, I was in labor for 3 days,
Ugh.
and we had gotten to the point you know, I think the mental state that I was at and, like, trying to control anything that I could control, the one thing like, the hill that I was going to die on in that moment was, if I do not need a C-section, I do not want one because we are about to go through so much with this little baby, and the last thing I want is to be healing myself in that way if I don't need to be.
Yeah.
And I'd had the really unfortunate experience when I was in nursing school where I had watched an OB. It's just still crazy to me this happened. They looked at their clock or look at their watch on their wrist, and she's like, "It's 5:07, and I think we'll just go ahead and cut her because I wanna make it home for dinner with my kids." And that was not what I
God.
wanted for me, like,
My God.
um so, all that to be said, if it had been up to them, I definitely would have had a C-section, but I was like, "You're absolutely not cutting me open unless we emergently need that. She needs that, I need that, and I don't see that here." But it meant I was on Pitocin and induced. But when she was finally born, we were really lucky initially because that birthing room, I mean, it felt like there were 30 people in that room. Like, they were so ready. It was like everybody had their team and their role, and, like, anything that could have happened with Meadow, like, they were ready in that room, in that moment to do it. But
Mhm.
she came out blue, but all babies kinda come out purplish blue anyways, and she was stable enough in that moment to be able for us to hold her and to have a few moments with her and, like, pretend to be a family even though 30 people are staring at us and, like, have that, like, initial moment. For really, like, the first 24 hours after birth, she could have potentially sustained herself because there's a hole that's open in your heart in every baby that's born, and then for most people, that closes off in the first day.
Mhm.
That hole for her was like her saving grace. It gave her blood flow, it gave her oxygen, even though it wasn't totally what she needed, it was enough. And so that's why we were able to have this really nice moment right after she was born. But then they took her to the NICU, and that was when we kind of started running into issues because we tried to go over several times because the children's hospital and the labor and delivery ward were connected, which is incredible. I was so grateful for that. And they were like, we're trying to get a PICC line in. PICC line is basically a really fancy IV that runs to your heart. So we're trying to get this PICC line in. And I mean, teeny tiny baby, teeny tiny veins. Like, it's not going very well right now. We don't want you in the room for that. Like, it's a sterile procedure. And like, my nursing brain understands all of this. I've seen all of this, right? But
Mhm.
it just kept going on and on and on. And so she was born at 3 o'clock, but we didn't get to see her until almost 9, and it
Mm.
was a really long in between time of just like, "I wanna see her and what's going on, and can someone give me an update?" And, like, I really don't care about me and have just given birth and all that, like, I just want to, like, see the baby. And we finally get to see her, and we're, like, so excited and initially, honestly, a little taken back as well because since they couldn't get the PICC line, they were searching for places for an IV, so they shaved her head. And so that was just kind of like a jarring experience in and of itself to be like, "Wait, is this the baby I just had? And, like, do I know her?" Like, it
Right.
was just this weird but I was like, "Okay, no, this is her." and they had just gotten the PICC line in, and the goal of getting the PICC line was to start this medication that would keep that hole open for a few more days until she had her surgery. That was the main goal. What they didn't tell us about the medication is there's a side effect when they're trying to figure out what dose works best for you. Of it can cause you to have something called apnea episodes where you stop breathing.
Mm.
So we walk into the room. They just got the PICC line started. We're so excited. They're starting this life-saving medication for her to be able to sustain herself until the heart surgeon is back in the country. Like, we're having this moment, and then her oxygen dives down to 30%. We're immediately thrown out of the room. She immediately has to be intubated. And I just, like, think about that sometimes. It's just, like, my introduction into parenthood and being a heart mom, um, and really kind of the beauty of, like, me and my husband could already become this team inherently because up until that point, like, he had been my strong person, like, I had been in labor, and it was awful and, like, all this stuff, and, like, he was there, he was ready, he was in the moment, and because he had no lived hospital experience and, like, the only person he had ever seen intubated was someone who was, like, critically ill and almost died, in his brain, he's like, "Oh, the baby is dying."
Right.
And in my brain, I'm able to articulate, like, "No, this is the medication, and the intubation is just a bridge while we're figuring out the dosing, and then she'll be able to be extubated, and we'll kind of get a reboot." I mean, obviously, it wasn't what I wanted to see or what I envisioned seeing her the first time after birth, but I could understand that, and he could not, so then we had to kind of flip roles a bit, and I'm like, "No, like, she's okay. She's gonna be okay. Like, this is just an interim thing." But we often did that throughout our stay in the hospital. I mean, total, we were there several months, and so we really had to figure out, okay, like, who's gonna be the lead person today? Who has less capacity today? And how do we bridge that gap for ourselves?
I love that you bring that up. That is so there's so many things I wanna touch on, but it's I think a thing that a lot of couples, and especially new parents, forget is that neither of you are ever gonna be operating at 100%.
Never ever.
No, never, for the rest of your, children,
Yeah,
as
this is your
long as they're seriously, like, this is your life forever. And also, you can't expect that you're gonna balance each other either, like, you're not always gonna be 60 while he's 40 and he's, you know what I mean? Um, but it's okay to talk about, like, "Okay, do you have the capacity to be the point person today?"
well, that's like the sentence of my household.
Right.
We're always saying that
Yes.
back and forth, like, "In this moment, do you have this?"
Yeah, that's huge, and that's something that, like, is learned through situations like this, I think. When you're faced with crisis or when you're faced with challenge, you have to you have to learn quick. Um, so so that was one thing, the one area that I wanted to touch on. Also, that you did experience you and Meadow experienced a long NICU journey. How this is I always hesitate on this question. What did that look like for you guys? Was the NICU close to where you were? Were you far from home? Like, how were you navigating that part?
We were so lucky. I know I've used the word lucky several times, but I really I try to lean into the gratitude of the things that we did have working for us. Like, for example, me and my husband being in the NICU together and being in the CCU
Mhm.
together. Like, that is the ultimate gift to never feel like you're alone making decisions, for example. But for us, I think we were kind of set up for failure in the sense that they told us her first surgery, which was a patch for her to grow bigger and stronger, because her full repair is what they call her second surgery, where they really fix the defects. You want them to weigh as much as possible because that has the best outcomes. So her first surgery is a patch for her to grow bigger, stronger, eat way more. And they told us that that was definitely the more dangerous of the two. So we were gonna have the longer stay with that one. She would probably be more unstable afterwards. After she had her patch surgery, they actually had the medical director of the entire hospital sit in her hospital room for 24 hours. Like, that's how high risk this is.
Wow.
Meadow, that surgery, I mean, it went incredibly. Like, everything went exactly right. We had no complications. She nailed it. They nailed it. Like, nothing. And
Yeah.
so we She was born the first week of August, and we were home by the end of August, even though we thought that it would be late September, early October before we got to go home. And we kind of ended up having to make our home this like makeshift hospital environment. And that sucked, but at least we were home. And our local children's hospital, when I got the diagnosis when we were pregnant, I thought immediately we were gonna have to travel to a hospital that I knew about 3 hours away from here, and they're like, "No, we have everything that you need here, downtown, like, 25 minutes from your house." They had just built in the year before a dedicated cardiac ICU for
Wow.
peds. Incredible, and thank you to Jennifer Lawrence from The Hunger Games for funding that unit because
Oh my
I
gosh,
appreciate it.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, she's from Kentucky.
That's
But really,
amazing.
we had everything that we needed right at home. My in-laws live like 10 minutes down the road. I mean, all of that was incredible. And we lived just close enough that we were able to go home and have that what they call interstage time or in between time until our next surgery. But the hard part of, like, being home is because didn't know I had OCD, I mean, I was so hypervigilant, and I was so overwhelmed because, like, the protocol that we were under was, like, we submit her weight twice a day. We also submit how much she eats, so we have everything recorded. Every ml of milk that she drank in her 4 months of life is in a filing cabinet in our house.
You still have it.
Oh, we still have
Yeah.
my husband is attached to those. And we also had to keep her hooked up to a saturation monitor and see where her saturations were and submit those a couple of times a day. And so we didn't really get to have like the full like newborn home experience, but we got little bits and pieces. And eventually we got to a point where we had these 2 incredible women who would sit with her at night from, like, 12 to 6 just so we could get a stretch of sleep, and I think having that stretch of sleep was so important
Yeah.
because her little oxygen monitor, I mean, it was great, but, like, every time she moved her foot, I mean, she's a newborn baby, she's gonna move around, it would just blare, and, like, that was so jarring for both of us to be like, "Okay, are we back in the ICU? Like, where are we in this moment?" Etcetera. The goal was that she was gonna be home, we were gonna do this protocol, all these things for almost a year,
Mhm.
and instead, on Thanksgiving weekend, I was up by myself with her because we didn't have overnight care, it was a holiday, so me and my husband are doing shifts because neither of us felt comfortable enough to both be asleep while she was like, we wanted somebody up with her at all times.
Yeah.
Um so we skipped all the holidays that year because we didn't wanna risk her getting sick. Because the
Mhm.
other thing, and I know I'm throwing a lot of details, but there was just so many pieces, was when we brought her home in this in between time, like, her oxygen was not normal. Like, her oxygen on a day-to-day basis was about 80%. And for anyone else out in the world, if you walked into the ER today and your oxygen was 80%, like, they were prepared to intubate you. Like, they would be ready, like, "This is an emergency." But
Yeah.
for her, like, that's her normal and her baseline until we can get her heart fixed. And her patch, and I didn't know this at the time, and I'm actually really, really grateful that I didn't know this, was the size of a diamond stud earring. And so if it narrows or starts to develop clots at all, like, that really reduces her ability to get even the little bit amount of oxygen and blood that she's getting. And so Thanksgiving weekend, I'm staying up with her by myself. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. She's totally asleep. I'm literally just sitting there staring at her, and all of a sudden the monitor just starts blaring like crazy. And it's like 59%,
Mm.
55%, 42%. And so immediately I like start waking her up. I'm like, is it the pro? Because I tell people all the time, like, when you have someone on the monitor, like, look at your patient, don't look at the monitor. Like, that might be doing its own thing, but look at what you got in front of you. And so I'm like trying to wake her up and stimulate her. And I do all that and it pops back up. But it wasn't like she was moving. There wasn't anything else going on. Like, it literally just dropped on its own. And I knew the probe was in a good spot. And I told her cardiology team, it was really nice. They kind of had like a bat line that you could call. And I was like, hey, I'm going to sound like a crazy person. And I know you guys already know I'm anxious, but here I am. And I know that it's like holiday weekend, but I do want to let you know that she was asleep and it dropped down to this amount. So whatever you all want me to do with that, great. And they were like, we would just feel a lot better if you brought her in because why not? And what we found out was that little patch that was the size of a diamond stud earring had now narrowed to half of that size. And so it
Mm,
was now time to go ahead and have her second surgery way earlier than anyone anticipated. And unfortunately for us, I feel like her surgery was really set up for complications from the beginning in the sense that, that little teeny tiny patch is the only thing giving her blood flow. And they have her on blood thinners every day. Like, we were giving this teeny tiny 4-month-old baby Lovenox shots every day to keep her blood thin,
yeah.
and they weren't able to stop her blood thinners before her surgery, which sounds so counterintuitive to any medical knowledge you've ever heard.
I mean, I don't even have that extensive of medical knowledge, and I'm like, "Oh, no."
Yeah, so we had to send a baby on blood thinners into surgery, and that was a calculated risk because what everyone decided as a team was it's far riskier to take the chance of taking her off the blood thinners and that fully clotting off than it is to take a baby into surgery on blood thinners because we can replace blood loss. Like, that's a problem
Mhm.
we can fix. But it really, like, set us up for a whole host of complications and other melodrama because anyone out there, like, they don't even want you to take ibuprofen before surgery, let
Mm-mm.
alone, like, an actual heavy duty blood thinner.
And, like, I heard you say earlier on, like, "We got so lucky with this, and we got so lucky with this," and then it just sounds like all of a sudden, everything kinda caved in on itself. My curiosity, and I know you are such a fierce advocate for Meadow and for the medical research and for her condition, but, like, I'm curious through that, you said your OCD, you were hyperfixating a lot. Were you taking any steps at that point to address that, or was 100% of your focus on Meadow?
So, I got a glimmer of an idea that I might have OCD during my pregnancy because somebody mentioned it to me offhand.
Mhm.
And what me and my husband decided was during my pregnancy is probably not the best time to go get a new diagnosis. And I think that's fair. And I think
I think that's
now,
fair.
like, I think even looking back, I would have made the same choice just for the sheer fact of, it's really stressful to go through OCD treatment, especially in the way that I ended up doing it eventually. And I don't think I would have been able to do that during my pregnancy. I don't think I would have had the capacity or bandwidth for that.
So you're in that postpartum phase, which is a challenge in and of itself, but you're also navigating all of these new challenges with
I do
Meadow that you
remember
didn't
now.
foresee,
Yes.
right? So were you able at all to address your own mental health, or were you all in on Meadow and not focusing inward at all?
I was pretty much all in on Meadow. What I told myself was when Meadow makes it through this period of time and this like super critical, like she could die time, because they told us actually that between surgeries would be the most high risk time of her entire life based on
Mm.
her heart. So I was like, once we make it through this window of time, then I can figure out what's going on with me. I can heal my brain. I know I'm gonna have so much stuff circulating around from all these experiences. But especially given the way that her second surgery went and all the complications and all the different pieces, I can't even imagine leaving the hospital room to, like, go to therapy or do something else. Like,
Yeah.
the ICU attendings had to beg me to just, like, take a walk outside sometimes and just, like, get some fresh air, and there was just no way that I was leaving her in that moment to focus inward, which is also why when she got out of the hospital in mid-January, it was less than a week later that I went and got my OCD diagnosis, and then it was less than a month after that that I entered into an intensive outpatient program because I was like, "I just can't function and live in this way."
Yeah. Well, and so I ask that because it highlights several things. That one, even in a typical, like, birth and postpartum period, you are so focused on
Baby,
baby,
baby, baby, baby.
baby, 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 and with Meadow specifically, like, you just like we were talking earlier, like, you did not have the bandwidth to
No.
look inward at all. Know that you and I don't know if it's retrospect or if you knew in the time, but, like, you noticed these things. You noticed that you were hypervigilant. You noticed that you were but you're absolutely right, and it's so common that you're like, no, I'll deal with that later." this is what I need to deal with right
I
now.
don't even have time to even consider dealing with that right now.
No, no. I'm just trying to think about which direction I wanna go in because you've mentioned like, you piqued my interest with, intensive outpatient. Well, I that isn't an that's an experience that I also went through, and it's not one that is highlighted often.
No.
No. Right? I'm excited about this topic, like, when we talk about I'm remembering I was talking to a dad who had postpartum depression. I'm like, "I'm so excited to talk about this with you," and it's like, I'm not excited that you were depressed,
Yes.
but because it's not something that is brought up often, I do wanna talk more about Meadow, but I'm very curious, how did you come to know about or think about starting this IOP program?
Never even heard of IOP. Like, I had not heard of, like, an intensive outpatient program. Like, I had been in nursing school. I had seen the inside of psych wards and units. That was very intimidating and very, very scary to me.
Mhm.
So we got out of the hospital with Meadow. And to just give a little bit of perspective, Meadow Venida, her second surgery, almost died. And then for the week after her second surgery, they actually had to emergently reopen her chest and leave it open.
Mm.
And literally, like, we could stand over her body and, like, watch her heartbeat from outside her body, which is such a weird experience. So I tell you all to say I had a lot of intrusive images and a lot of intrusive thoughts, and it was PTSD layered with OCD. Like, it was all a swirl. But a friend had mentioned to me that maybe I had OCD while I was pregnant. And when we got home, I just could not stop all of my compulsions and all of my hypervigilance. And there's so much hyper responsibility that comes along with being a parent and having OCD as well. And I felt like I'd had some of those things a little bit reinforced because, I switched OBs and then we found out she was sick, or I was the person who was there the one random time her oxygen dropped and that was the time, like,
Mhm.
so I had all this reinforced to be hyper responsible and be hyper vigilant. But like we came home, I just could not sleep. I felt like I couldn't eat. I felt like I couldn't function. Here I am supposed to go back into my company now and reintegrate into this role and figure out what's going on. And I am up all night, every night, because we don't have anyone at night anymore, and they tell us that she doesn't need the oxygen monitor anymore and she's okay now. But, like, how do you shut off that part of your brain when you've just spent the last 4 or 5 months always hooked up to a monitor and always watching? And so, you know, a normal well, not normal, but, like, a pretty routine postpartum anxiety experience is to, like, watch your baby breathe or to
Mhm.
count their breaths. But for me, it was just, like, on this whole other level of, I would get up and I'm like, "Okay, she's breathing." And I would be like, "Okay, I counted 5 breaths," and I fall back asleep, but then, like, I might wake back up 20 minutes later, and this time I have to count 10 times, like, 5 doesn't feel good enough anymore. And it very much became this insatiable cycle to literally one night I was like it was 154 times I had to feel her breathe. And,
Wow.
like, how do you sleep when you're waiting for someone to breathe 154 times in a
Yeah.
row? And I would also get trapped of like, "Oh, like, what if I skipped a number and now I have to start over?" So, I was very much at a point where it was affecting every area of my life, and so I decided, like, if there's a chance I do have this, I wanna know because I cannot continue on like this. I feel like I'm going to end up on a psych unit somewhere or be committed somewhere. Like, I feel sick.
Yeah.
And when I got my diagnosis, I didn't know IOP was an option. I hadn't really heard of that before. But when I did the Y-box scale, which is that OCD assessment scale, I believe it was out of like a range of 0 to 40 or something right in there. And I literally scored like a 37. So it
Yeah.
really was eating up every area of my life, which is why she suggested, like, if you have the ability, because your symptoms are so bad and it's just taking up so much time, I think you should explore the IOP route where basically for 4 to 6 weeks, you do therapy for about 4 hours a day with 4 different therapists,
Mhm.
and you really just, like, tackle this thing head on. And I've always been an all-in kind of human, but I was also really desperate in that moment because, like, I it would be so easy as a heart mom to, like, be the helicopter parent and, like, always be, like, over your kid's shoulder. But that was never what I wanted or aspired to, and I never wanted my own anxiety or my own mental health to be a hindrance to, like, my one-day children,
Mhm.
and I was like, "If there is a time to tackle this, I think it's now when she won't remember, and then hopefully I'll be better resourced, better skilled for the times that she does remember." And so really, like, motivators for me, 1, just to be able to show up in everyday life because I needed to, but 2, far more than that was to be, like, be a true present mom like I really, really wanted to be.
Yeah. That's huge, by the way. Like, that is not an easy conclusion to come to or a decision to make.
It was so scary. Well,
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, and especially for several reasons. And the reason it is not a comparison game, but I'm like anyone in a situation like this, whether it's a situation like yours or whether you have a perfectly healthy child, but you are really struggling with OCD or postpartum OCD, that decision to go all in like that, because it's exactly like what you said, it's intensive treatment. It's like going to school again.
it is like going to school.
You're going to school and it's therapy school. And I'm assuming because, again, I did IOP as well. Did you do dialectical behavioral therapy through
I
that?
did not. I
You did
specifically
not.
did ERP.
Okay, so you did
Yep.
ERP, which well, that's the standard for OCD. Which when you said like when you were like, which I'm sure you know, it's like I have not done that yet. I did DBT and I still have to work on ERP, but all of these acronyms, listeners, Google them. We're not like
Yes,
I love.
ERP is exposure and response prevention. So in
Yes.
the simplest way, you expose yourself to all of your scariest worst fears, and then you don't do your compulsions, and then you realize that you didn't die, and then you do it again.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
terrifying.
It's pretty bad.
It's really scary. But to make that decision to go all in on yourself when your baby's still little, I love your rationale behind it too, though. Like, that's powerful. That's badass that you were like, no,
Thanks.
she's not going to remember
No, she
this
won't have
right
any
now.
clue.
No, but I want to be there when she does remember me and I want her to have my best self. Like, that that is when we tell moms, like, the best thing that you can do for your child is take care of yourself, like that
Absolutely.
oxygen mask analogy that we've all heard a million times is the truth. It's the truth. So so you did your IOP program. Was Meadow with dad at the time? Did you? Because I know she's still kind of in that, like, you don't want her to get sick, like,
Yes.
what did that look like?
So, as I said, I'm an all in human. And the company that had acquired mine was based out of the West Coast. And so I did not tell anyone that I was doing IOP outside of my immediate family. Like my husband
Mhm,
knew, my in laws knew. And we actually, so one of the women who used to sit overnight with Meadow, it was this really cool like moment of happenstance for us because we had worked with them through a doula agency, and so, like, we didn't know exactly who they were gonna bring in, but they, like, obviously were briefed on Meadow's history and stuff. But one of the women that they brought in used to be a medical assistant or tech in the cardiac ICU at the children's hospital Meadow was at. Yes, incredible, I mean, just, like, unbelievable how well that was matched, and so we asked her like, "Hey, would you maybe just, like, wanna stay here forever? Like, do you wanna be Meadow's nanny? Like, we're not gonna we can't feel safe about putting her in daycare right now. Like, we're not there, like, we're not mentally there, and she's not medically there either. Maybe one day, and now we've just decided, like, Hannah's gonna stay forever, like, we're not gonna do a daycare thing." But and I say that with the most, like, humbleness and grace and not arrogance, like, we're very, very lucky also to be able to do that, but I think, like, I would have really lost my mind if we had to put Meadow in daycare right after coming out of the hospital and, like, she was on chest precautions and all these different things. But all that to be said, I would do my IOP from 8 to 12 every morning because at noon, West Coast time is 9 o'clock their time, so that's when their day starts, and then I would work
yeah.
every day from 12 to 5 or 12 to 6 trying to, like, reintegrate into my new company and take on this new role, like, was quite literally a chief nursing officer, and I was very excited. I've always been very career ambitious, so to, like, have a title like that and be 28 years old, I did not wanna do anything to mess that up. And I
Yeah.
wanted, even though I'm doing all this, like, terrible, scary work in the morning, like, I'm not gonna show up as my best self, like, I'm not gonna have the most capacity, but I do think I can still show up, and I don't think I can take any more time away after all this time I've just taken with Meadow. And me and my husband actually did some of the sessions together, which was really cool. So for me, for anyone out there listening who doesn't really understand what OCD is, the like core tagline that I tell people all the time, because I think it makes it very clear, is it's simply just an intolerance of uncertainty. So
Mhm.
everything, every behavior, all these things that people are doing, like washing their hands, which is only one flavor of OCD, is to get this certainty of I don't have germs on my hands or I'm not going to get sick or like whatever that is. It's not actually about the hand washing.
Mhm.
And some different things that can kind of pop up to really get that certainty is reassurance seeking. Avoidance is another big one. And unfortunately, me and my husband, we have been together probably 6 or 7 years at that point. And so those kind of behaviors were already hardwired and ingrained into our relationship because we didn't know that's what we were dealing with.
Right.
And so, I might ask Ben, be like, "Hey, like, do you think Meadow's heart's okay today?" And there's like no way that he could know the answer to that.
Mhm.
But I just need like I want to hear it from someone else. But as we talked about with the breathing example, it becomes this insatiable cycle of like, okay, I asked once, but now it doesn't feel good enough anymore. Now I'm gonna ask 3 times. Now I'm gonna ask 5 times. And so like he really had to be a part of that process with me. And my first week of IOP, I will never forget it because he just stopped talking to me because he was so
Mm.
afraid of giving me reassurance and he didn't know what to say and he was like overwhelmed himself, which fair. But it was nice that we kind of had a checkpoint with one of the therapists who just worked specifically with us as a couple of like how do we manage this together and also trying to find, OCD really wants everything to be black and white, and nothing in life is black and white, just like nothing in life is certain. And we had to be able to find a gray area of like, where does our relationship have this like mutual ground of I can ask for reassurance sometimes because that is part of a normal and healthy relationship without it dipping into OCD territory. But we have some fun skills that we still use today where we try to poke fun at OCD. Like humor is a big part of our relationship, bringing levity to it is a big part of our relationship. And so sometimes my husband will literally ask me, he'll be like, "Are you asking me that or is your OCD asking me that?" He's like, "I think it's the OCD." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Of course it is." I'll be like, "My OCD is really talking to me right now, but I'm trying not to listen to it." Or like, "You can't do X, Y, or Z because I think it's going to feed my compulsions." But just having the awareness, the intentionality, and more importantly than anything else, the dialogue and the communication and the conversation, like, that saves the game.
Yeah, and again, I always say this, like, this isn't about me, and this isn't I try not to play the, "Oh, yeah, but the" First of all, it's insanely ironic to me that your husband's name is Ben, that is also my husband's name, and that exact situation is what we had to go through once we had that diagnosis of OCD. I remember those days and those reassurance seeking days, and you're like, "Can you I just need to hear you say it. Like, I just need to hear you say it." And again, like, our therapists were saying, like, you
Nope,
can't
don't do it.
say it. Don't say it." And just like you explained, the impulse to reassurance seek and then to be told, like, "No, no, you can't give that reassurance," like, whew, that is something that, you can't explain to someone who hasn't experienced it because it's physical, man.
But I feel it in my gut. Even you just, like, saying those words, like, I feel it in my gut.
Yes. I apologize, I don't mean to trigger you, but, like,
No, no.
I see you. Like, I see you. So, let's kind of yeah, you did your IOP program. You also were on top of this business switch. Like, it doesn't really feel like there was any time for you, for Sarah, during that time.
No, and I think, like, anytime I did have, like, I was still also, I think I just wanna, like, give the insight. I kinda said it flippantly earlier of, like, face your fears head on and realize you don't die, and that's true.
Yeah.
But To, like, give you just an idea of, like, kind of the content that I was dealing with and doing these exposures, I mean, we worked up to doing an exposure at the end of my OP where we literally created a tombstone for my daughter, and we set the date for the end of the year to, like, really combat my magical thinking and, like, in some ways, it's nice to realize, like, you're not the supreme ruler of the universe, like, you don't get to magically decide, like, what's gonna happen, but I think even in my off time from therapy and work, like, I was really having to grapple with a lot, even in the sense of, like, not doing my compulsions in the after, because when you do ERP, what you do is you do the scary thing, like making a tombstone, and then you don't do your compulsions, and they call it, like, riding the wave, and so you just ride the wave down, and you realize, like, "Oh, okay, like, I'm okay, everybody's okay." And then you still have to follow up behind that though to not do the compulsions later because I mean, you could log off the Zoom or walk away from the therapy place or whatever else and go do the compulsions, and that really ruins all of the work that you just did. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's gonna happen. So I'm not saying like you just ruin the whole thing by doing the compulsion. Like it happens, but it does take a lot of mental work and intentionality to be able to not do that. But what I hoped and what the benefit of doing an intensive program is like you get to see week to week, like how much your symptoms are already starting to back down. So, like, you already have this like light at the end of a tunnel that's being painted for you. Week one, you don't have that. Week one was the worst by far.
Yeah.
But like week two, I'm realizing, okay, like I'm having less symptoms. Week three, I'm having less symptoms. You're going to get there. And I think actually for me, what my fear shifted to and what it really became was I felt like I was only successful because of my OCD because it gave me so much drive. And
Mhm.
now if I don't have this thing anymore, or at least I have less symptoms of it, because I also tell people like there's a difference between being recovered and recovering. And I'm always recovering from OCD. Like it's never fully gone for me. But who am I without it? And that was almost more intimidating to me sometimes than thinking about living with it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially for someone who, like you said, was so career driven. It is easy to see when you pan out and like wide lens, like doing IOP, caring for your daughter, transitioning your company, like OCD, right? I mean, that's a lot for anyone. And some people be like, oh, I'm just type A. That's just how I operate. But from a fellow like OCD sufferer, you do that. I almost feel like that panic of like, "Nope, I have to be in control of this and it has to
Mhm.
happen this way." I do there's days where I'm like, "No, if I don't have that, then it's not gonna get done.
Yeah.
And then this is gonna fall apart, and then this is gonna fall apart, and then this is" so, yeah, I that resonates so deeply with me, and I'm so appreciative of how open you've been in sharing your experience of OCD and anxiety through this journey and just in life. Because and like you said, you almost, like, mentioned it flippantly, but, like, that's so helpful to hear not only for people who don't experience it, but for people who are experiencing it, especially in the postpartum period, and may not know what it is.
Yeah, if you don't know what it is, I tell people all the time, like, if you don't know what the thing is and you can't name the thing, then you can't figure out how to deal with the thing. And the other thing is too, like we mentioned earlier, like we've both been in therapy since we were 12. So I went 18 years misdiagnosed. And it was so pivotal and life changing to me. Like some people be like, OCD is just another label. And I'm like, no, it got me the treatment that I finally needed. I need so much less therapy now. And the thing about OCD, if you do traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, is you get a lot of reassurance.
I mean, I do
Mm.
CBT, and I think that there's a place for it, but there you have to be so super intentional because, yeah, you
Intentionality.
yes, because you can be reinforcing a lot of those, like, I refer to them as superstitious thinking, like
Huh?
yeah. Um, so bringing it back to your journey with Meadow, so you did the IOP, you said you came out realizing that you weren't feeling the symptoms as intensely, and you were sort of kind of taking back control in a different way because OCD is
Yeah.
a lot about control.
So much control.
Yeah, like, control in a different way. So, at this point, Meadow's getting older. Today, Meadow's 3. She's
Yeah.
newly 3. She's a
She's a fresh 3.
she's a fresh 3. Are you in that three-nager land right now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She's a character, and I'm actually at least for now, I am the chosen one, as I call myself, where, like, I am her person, and so, like, I really enjoy that I get that role because she of course, she loves her nanny, she loves her dad, she loves all the people around her, but, like, I am the person, and I really love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't surprise me, just like I said, I've never met Meadow, and I'm just meeting you for the first time
Sure.
today, but just knowing, I do, I wanna acknowledge, and it's not toxic positivity in any way, but the superpower in recognizing a problem that's something that's not working for you and actively choosing to find a solution or to work on that problem. So, like, that's a superpower. So, you probably are her superhero. You're setting such an example for her, like, mommy takes care of mommy and mommy gets her stuff done, and, like, yeah. I w I'd like to say that I'm the chosen one, but my three-nager, she is her own chosen one. She's a second child, and she has that second child syndrome where she is
Uh,
just she's a little beast, but we love her. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about today. Like, where is Meadow's health at today, and what does the future look like for both of you on this journey?
you know, today I feel like we get to play pretend a little bit because her last big surgery was right between, like, 4 and 5 months old, and basically, every time she grows exponentially now, she has a lingering piece, which is a fake heart valve, so it needs to be replaced via open heart surgery. We hope she'll be 5 before that next surgery, and so we're kind of living in that nice in-between time where we're going to cardiology appointments, but it's not time yet, etcetera. But there is so much uncertainty that lives in the fact of, like, every time we go to an appointment, it could be the time, and that's really scary and really intimidating, and it's just good for me to always be mindful of because my OCD, it wants that certainty. It wants to be like, "Oh, like, she's absolutely okay," and even last night, like, I forget exactly what she did, but she just, like, looked at me funny, and I'm like, "Is she okay? Is it her valve?" And I'm like, shut up, OCD, like, get out of here."
Yeah.
But what's cool about being an in-between is she has so much fun. Like, she didn't have a genetic condition, which we're so grateful for, and even though she had all those complications, she had a brain bleed, she was on bypass, like, it felt like everything was kind of, like, stacked against her to develop normally. She has, and she did, and she was only a little bit behind physically for just a little while, but, I mean, she had major chest surgery twice, like, how could you not be behind physically? Like, you don't have core
Yeah.
strength. But mentally, she has always been so sharp, and it's, like, so fun to, like, watch her become her own little human. Like, she's funny. Like, she's, like, genuinely funny, and it catches me off guard still. I'm like, "Oh, like, you're a whole human in there." And I love that I get to, like, do things like this and talk about our story and try to paint what we lived through in a different way, and also I've done a lot of advocacy work, a lot of philanthropy work, trying to change the future for children like Meadow because what we hope is that her next surgery is her last one. And then they could do alternative procedures in the future to replace that valve. And that's a very real possibility. But of course, we need funding, research, trials, all the different things to support that. And I tell people all the time, I have this really incredible perspective and leverage point of, like, when I go to Washington, DC, for example, like, I have the medical knowledge, but I also have the personal lived experience and the story, and that makes you the most incredible advocate because you can see both sides of it, and you can bring both of those things into the conversation. So it's like, how could I not be doing this work? Like, this is, like, I feel like what I've been designed to do, I just didn't know this is where it was gonna end up.
And anyone who has listened to the show for any length of time knows that I am not a fan of the term silver linings,
Mm,
and that's okay, that's a personal thing, but I do believe that the universe kind of sets us up for what's to come to
yeah.
a certain degree. And yeah, in your case, like, your medical background paired with your personal experience, paired with your get it done attitude,
And
like,
selling a
makes
business, like
yeah, like, puts you in this perfect position to be the advocate and the philanthropist that you are today. So, yeah, so Meadow is a funny 3-year-old who is becoming her own person.
she rides
You're
horses, like,
Oh my god, I
fullest
love it. You
life, fullest life.
Oh my gosh, I like I said, I've never met her, but I can just picture her, and she sounds like such a joy. If you put her and my Avery in a room together, I think it would be pretty freaking hilarious. I lost my train of thought because of my dog. Um,
Bring it full circle.
yes. Oh my god, thank you. You're so sweet. I'm usually so much better at
Listen,
this.
listen, we did filming for the hospital the other day because 'cause they're doing a big campaign, and
Yeah.
Meadow was doing what your dogs are doing behind me the entire time, throwing a wagon into a wall, twirling, running. I'm like, "I'm trying to talk about seeing your heart from outside your body, and you're running a wagon into a wall. Like, what is happening right now?" So, I
That's
feel it
kind of
in my
that's kind of
soul.
beautiful though, right? Like, isn't that kind of beautiful? You're like, "I did see your heart beating outside of your chest, and now you can throw wagons against the wall."
Yes.
Like, right?
What a gift.
What a gift. We love that. But yeah, so bringing it back to you today, every day's different. How are you feeling though about your own mental health at this stage of your motherhood journey?
I really feel like it's the best it's ever been in my entire
Yeah,
life. Not even just like in being a mom, like in my entire life. Like the motto of my everyday is your urgency is not my emergency. Because for
I love
me,
that.
it's my favorite. It's so good. But in building my business, the fact that I had 3 college degrees by the time I was 25, like I lived in a constant state of urgency, urgency, emergency, emergency. Like I've got to run, I got to be faster. And so at first it was really hard to slow down because I just like, what is this? I've never lived this. I've never given myself any kind of space ever. Because even leading up to starting my business, like I worked 2 nursing jobs. One was teaching, one was working at the bedside, and I was doing full time school. So I'm used to just outrunning all the time. And I've had so much more time and space for just like me and my thoughts. And so at first that kind of sucked, but now I really love that I have space and flexibility. And because of selling the business and being able to now exit out of that entirely, like I get to do stuff like this. But I also like a lot of times, middle of the day, like, Meadow goes to forest school sometimes in the mornings, but, like, I get to be home when she comes home from forest school, and, like, we get to hang out, and we get, like, all this in between time, and I think, like, that's really one of the most important things that I could be doing because you only get so much time with your kids, and I know everybody says it, and I know it's really cliche, but you really only get so much time with your kids, and I really want to enjoy her as much as possible for as long as I can because none of her life has ever been guaranteed. And we just live in this like weird spectrum and duality of like grief and joy all the time, but they're on the same spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that so much. And I love too that you acknowledge the duality and the and rather than the but,
So
right?
much
Like
and
so much and. So before I get to my wrap up question, which is a new exercise that I'm doing with my guests, for my listeners who want to learn more about the advocacy work that you're doing and about everything that you're doing for this community and helping Meadow and helping kids like Meadow, where is the best place to find you? And these will all be linked in the show notes.
yes, I am everywhere. So if you go to literally sarahmichellebose.com, I have a whole Heart Mom page, kind of talks about our story, our journey, my upcoming memoir. I'm still in the midst of working on said memoir because it's very involved. And as you can tell, I have a lot of stories and a lot of things to say. So I'm trying to condense that down. I'm also about to release my first children's book, which is really cool. And that's about heart defects. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm going to need that when it comes out.
Yeah, Meadow and her four-leaf clover heart. I'm very excited about it because the odds of having her defect are the same odds as finding a four-leaf clover. So,
Gosh.
we found all the
Oh,
four-leaf clovers.
it's gonna be on my bookshelf. It's gonna be yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's
But
just not enough books about heart differences, and I'm like, "Why
mm-mm.
not? Why not?" So find me on my website, but I'm also very heavily on Instagram, kind of in a reboot period right now where I'm still teasing away from my old business and still like establishing like, hey, like I am a human outside of this business, but that's about to be done here soon, which I'm very, very excited for. And then LinkedIn, I mean, you really could find me about anywhere. Like I do so many things. Like I even have an astrology podcast because that's just fun for me. So
So cool.
I'm everywhere all the time.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so it's all gonna be linked in the show notes. Listeners, please check the show notes. I'm gonna be following along. We all know that I'm obsessed with children's books, and I love the message behind this one, so I'm writing that down and saving it for later. So yeah, so first, I'm gonna thank you for spending time with me,
Yeah.
for rolling with the madness that is my dogs this morning for whatever reason. Yeah, so this is my new little exercise that I'm doing. I used to wrap up on one of two questions, but now I'm kicking us back in the day before text messages and when everyone was
Whoa.
reachable all the time, like when you could get a hold of anybody. This is back when you called and someone didn't answer, you had to leave a voicemail.
Yeah.
You had to. You
I
couldn't
grew
just
up
be
in
like,
Eastern
"Hey, I just called
Kentucky,
you."
so I know this life well.
Yes, right? And I mean, and I'm an elder millennial and in rural Vermont. So like
You
you
know the
just had
life.
to call and hope someone's parents didn't pick up. Um, but anyway, so you don't know anything about who my next guest is. You don't know what their story is. You don't know anything about their journey. But you called Quiet Connection today and they weren't here to answer. And you've got to leave them a message. And you can interpret that in whatever way resonates with you. What message would you like to leave for my next guest?
The message that I try to leave with lots of people, but also your next guest, is just this really pure message of how important it is, especially in the world that we live in today, to be transparent and authentic and vulnerable. It's really, really, really hard to do. I think I'm pretty well seasoned at this point. I'm just like, here's my life, here's my story. But it was so cool for me, and I can't overstate how cool of an experience it was to start my business and really mental health be the forefront of that business and see how people's lives were impacted and touched by the fact of me just being vulnerable and showing up as my whole self and being like, "Hey, I have panic attacks," and, "Hey, I have this going on," and, like, "I broke a tooth while I was preparing for this exam because I was so insanely anxious," and, like, all these different things. Um, but the response I got to that was not anything in what I anticipated. Like, I thought some people would be like, "Oh, that's cringe." Um, but for a lot of people, they're like, "Oh my god, this is the first time I've been seen in my life." Like, I went through all
Yes.
these years of nursing school, and they're always like, "Stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down." And I'm so grateful that you're just like, "No, here it is." And creating that community and building that business so fast was just a sheer result of authenticity. So if you're gonna be the next guest, that's what I would lean into.
I love it. And I love that I've never got the same answer twice. So the fun part is you're going to have to come back and listen to the episode before this to get
Yeah,
your
my
message.
message. This
Yeah.
was very witchy and magical, and I'm in.
Yeah. See, I don't know. It just, and we're going to see, I guests now and in the future, I want to hear from you. I want to be like, if the message hit home or if it was like, oh, that definitely wasn't my message. Like, I don't know. I'm curious, but anyway, Sarah, thank you so much for being authentically you and
Yeah.
for sharing your story and Meadow's story and just space with me this morning. I so appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
I am so grateful to Sarah for sharing not just her story, but her heart, for letting us see the strength, honesty, and advocacy that have grown from some of the hardest moments in her life. Her openness is a reminder of how powerful it is when we tell the truth about motherhood and mental health and are vulnerable with ourselves and others. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear Sarah's story. You can follow along with us on social media or visit us at quietconnectionpodcast.com to learn more. And if you'd like to share your own story, make sure you send us an email. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you. Tired of sugar-coated parenting podcasts?
Odd Moms on Call keeps it real with raw, unfiltered convos about raising kids in a chaotic world.
From postpartum madness to political mayhem, we are the moms who say what you're really thinking.
Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Buzzsprout.
Because this is the group chat you actually want to be in.